right, so to those of you who have been to a show, welcome back. For those of you who have not, welcome for the first time. Very special show for you this evening, very simple, very easy, all things that you could do at home. And maybe a few things that you could do up to a couple days in advance, all right? There's actually a few things that you have to do a couple of days in advance. We are making a roasted root vegetable medley. It's gonna be pan roasted. I'm gonna show you how to make a homemade ricotta cavatelli from scratch. We're gonna cook that and saute it with a brown butter as well as some sage, a little ricotta salata over the top of it, and you're gonna eat it. And you're gonna like it. All right, guys, so the first thing that we're gonna get started on is going to be the hash itself. I have parsnip, carrot, yellow turnip, or rutabaga. That's how they usually say yellow turnip at the grocery store, so if you're looking for it, that's what it's called. And then, of course, Idaho potato. The ones that I will be cutting for you are white turnip, sweet potato, onion, and I'm using a Spanish onion, and then, of course, celery. This is the only one that's not a true root vegetable here, right? And the reason why I'm using celery, two reasons: color and texture. Everything else tends to be brown or white or orange. And it's not Halloween quite yet, all right? So we are gonna try and move in that direction. Now, I'm just gonna leave these aside. I do have my pan on low at this point in time. And I'm gonna cut everything into a small dice, okay? This is actually pretty small. Remember, the smaller you cut something, the faster it's going to cook, all right? So keep that in mind for whenever you are making something. Now, if you wanted a much heartier hash, like I actually love this hash with a couple of eggs dropped over it. I usually do a soft poach or even a couple of over easy or fried eggs. This is a great alternative. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love corned beef hash, but if you're a vegetarian, this is a great alternative. Or if you're just trying to be healthy for a week, this is a good alternative. Starting with our white turnip here, and like I said, remember, we're only cutting about a 1/3 cup of each one, and we want to keep everything around the same size. Why is that important? Why is keeping everything consistent as far as the size goes important? Exactly. That was so good. I got like 50 responses at the same time. It was like a jumble, but I know that somebody did say it, but yes, they do. If you keep everything the same size, they're all gonna cook at about the same rate. Now, obviously each one of these root vegetables has a different water content in it, also cooks differently and it'll hold together differently, which is why I'm using so many different kinds, but it will be nice texturally at the end of the day. So this is a sweet potato. If you want to use a yam, you can use a yam because it's the same thing. Here in the United States, we like to call sweet potatoes that don't look like the ideal sweet potato a yam, but it's the same. If you want a real yam, you have to go to like an international or an Asian market. You'll be able to find a traditional yam there. Actual real sweet potatoes are actually almost creamy white in the center, and true yams are actually almost yellow in the center. So, a little bit of sweet potato as well. I don't like that end piece, so that's gonna go. Same thing. Keeping everything small dice. Beautiful. And I can mix these together because they're all going in at the same time. Celery. Kids talking about how sharp they are. Yeah. People are always like, how come I can't get mine that sharp? Or how come your cutting abilities are so great? I'm like, because the knives are sharp. How many of you have a knife drawer with like 80 knives in it? Why? I know. Go through, get rid of 90% of them, keep 3, because you'll only use 1, but you never know, somebody could be assisting you. All right, so using a Spanish onion, also small dice. Now, if you want to use a red onion, you can. If you want to use a sweet onion, you can do that as well. Pretty much any onion. If you want to torture yourself and use those little cocktail onions, by all means, you can do that too. If you're feeling festive. Okay? So easy. It's easy stuff. Easy peasy. All right, so pan on medium heat, little extra virgin olive oil. Now, root vegetables are like sponges, so I'm sure some of you are going to be horrified at the amount of salt that I add to them. For those of you who have ever made mashed potatoes and you couldn't figure out why the 2 tablespoons worth of salt wasn't enough, and then you had to put the other half of the box in there for it to actually taste like something, root vegetables are known for doing that, all right? So I'm gonna mix all of these together. And I do want to kind of slow roast them on the top of the stove, all right? So again, we have regular old horse carrots. We have rutabaga, or what they call a yellow turnip. These big waxy buggers at the grocery store, they're like my favorite thing ever. They taste like wasabi and smell like a fart. It's awesome. It's like the greatest thing ever. If you could buy something at the store that just tastes amazing and keeps people out of the room, it's like, why not, all right? White turnip, of course, they're so cute. They both have the purple tops, but then of course they're a different color on the bottom. You can always tell between them. It's always size, all right? So we have white turnip, yellow turnip, horse carrot, a little bit of onion, celery, sweet potato, and what else do we have? Idaho potato. That's the last thing. All right, so a little bit of salt and pepper in here, and we're gonna season again at the very end. I just wanna make sure it tastes good. I'm gonna add a little more extra virgin olive oil. We're gonna leave this on low and periodically come back to it and stir it, okay? So we're gonna let the hash go for a second. Let me wipe off my little peeler here because I'm gonna use this later on. And while this is slowly cooking on the stovetop, we're going to make our ricotta cavatelli. Now, cavatelli is kind of like gnocchi, but not really at all. The difference between the two is cavatelli is usually made with a cheese, whereas gnocchi is always made with a potato, all right? But the style in making it is very similar. And I am going to show you how to make it by hand. Yes, you can obviously make this in a KitchenAid mixer like that one over there and not do it by hand at all and keep your kitchen nice and clean. I think that this is fun to make it by hand. I've also been making pasta since I was 17. So when I don't do it by hand for a small batch like this, I feel like I'm cheating. When I make the cavatelli for you guys, I'm doing it in with a 50-pound bag of flour and in an 80-quart bowl. So I'm not mixing your cavatelli by hand. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry, ever. All right? So 1 cup of all-purpose flour. I'm not using high gluten. Okay? And then, of course, 1 egg in the center. So it's almost equal parts on everything here. 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 1 cup of ricotta. And I am going to season right around the rim. Too much salt? Don't worry, you'll be fine. We're all gonna end up in the ground someday, so you might as well enjoy it on the way out, you know? Just recently had that discussion with my doctor. I was like, so what you're saying is I can't eat anything that I like. And she's like, well, you have to eat it in moderation. I was like, so what you're saying is I have to change my whole life. And she was like, well, don't think about it that way. I was like, I can't eat bread, I can't eat pasta, I can't drink, and I can't have sugar. I was like, you tell me what's left. I'm not exactly sure what I can eat now. So, cup of flour, cup of ricotta cheese, beautiful. I'm not going to use all of this. This is more than a cup. Okay. Salt, pepper, and 1 egg. If you wanted to put a little parm in here, you absolutely could. I don't see any reason to actually do it, though. This is why most people don't like to make pasta by hand. Okay, so I'm just breaking the egg yolk and kind of whisking it in. And combine it with a little bit of our flour so it's a little more pasty and it doesn't run all over the place. Okay. Beautiful. Scraping this off. Now, once the dough comes together, 5 minutes worth of mixing, hand mixing. If you're doing it in a KitchenAid, it's probably going to be closer to 3. Can you overwork this? Yes. Do you want to? No. Okay. Same concept as gnocchi. Beautiful. Just combining it. I went to Culinary Institute of America in New York. I miss it every day. Yeah, it's beautiful. All right, so keeping a bench scraper nearby could be beneficial. If you buy one of those little plastic ones for 89 cents, it'll do exactly the same thing. So right now I'm literally just trying to combine the ingredients, and I have extra flour over here on the side because once the cavatelli dough starts to stick, you're going to want to use a little bit of flour to keep it from sticking to the board, and of course your hands. All right? But otherwise this is pretty easy to make. Let's get the rest of this. So just basic kneading, literally pushing down and then away from yourself. If you pull towards yourself, that's fine too. However you want to get it going is really up to you. So what you want to see is basically this. When you push in, you want it to push back. All right? That means that you've worked enough of the gluten within the flour for it to give bounce back, push back. Can you see it? Yeah. Great. Okay? So we are ready to go. This gets wrapped because this needs to rest, and I always encourage overnight resting. Whenever you're working gluten and flour, whether it's an all-purpose high gluten cake flour or a blend of all three, I always encourage extra resting time, all right? Because you're going to work the gluten again when you actually go to make the pasta. So this is going to go into the fridge, and I'm going to pull out the one I already have so that we can make our little pastas. Now, one of the things I do want to warn you about is whenever you're making a fresh pasta dough, the longer you wait to use it, the more it's going to oxidize. So a little bit of the flour has oxidized here, but it's fine. All right, so let's check our hash. Oxidizing. Just gets a little gray. Oops, I gave you a snack. You're like, I'll eat it.
Should I or shouldn't I?
Absolutely, go ahead. The counters are clean. I eat stuff off the floor, so like I am the last person to judge anyone. Floor spice makes everything nice. Ooh, that's good.
It is good.
Isn't it?
It's good.
It's the salt.
It's good.
It's like we had such a fun time at the show. I just kept eating random food off the counter. Every time it fell out of the pan, I just ate it. It was wonderful. I didn't get a meal at the end because they said I ate too much, but imagine that. All right, so I'm going to make just enough of these cavatelli by hand. And I'll save this for a second. Now, I'm just cutting off a few pieces. I still have my extra flour. Okay, I'm just going to roll them out into little snakes and make a couple. I'll show you how to make them by hand. Beautiful. So, little snakes. We'll make a couple. Now, there's essentially two ways to do this. Okay, let's get rid of this. Now, I have a gnocchi board. It's literally what it's called, even though you can make several different kinds of pasta with it. And I also have the actual cavatelli maker, which I'm not going to set up. If you want to spend between basically $150 up to $325, and you're going to make cavatelli all day, every day, this is what you buy. If you're not, and you just want to make it every so often, you buy a gnocchi board for $8.99. This is the nice one. You could even buy a crappy one on Amazon for $2.99. All right? So it's really your choice. Now inside here, there's just different divots, basically, different ridges for three different styles, or I guess three different ribbed cavatelli. This has one rib on it, and that's what we're using, one surface on it. So this is what we're gonna use. But I always like to show people what we use because your cavatelli came out of a machine that looks like this, because there's absolutely no way that I could ever torture any of my staff to use this and make cavatelli for 40 people. So we have this machine in the back. All right, and this helps us get it done really quickly. On this bad boy, I'm just gonna show you how to make it by hand. Let's take the stick out. The stick, that annoys me. It's usually gone by now. Actually, I haven't lost it yet. It's a miracle. It is a miracle. All right, so just taking our little pieces here and adding a little bit of flour onto the board. Just pressing them down into these cute little cavatellis. All right, so let's break some of these up. I'll try and do a couple as quickly as possible. All right. I love the cheddar. They're like, oh my God, look at that. Do you see how efficient it is? $8.99. I must get one. Sur la table, okay? You see the ridges? They're so cute, aren't they? So this is pretty simple. You can make gnocchi on this. You can also make garganelli on this as well. That's actually what the stick is for. I do have a little sheet. I'm not going to make a billion of these. So I'm just going to scoop these up onto this tray. This I'm going to toss. This I'm going to toss. Someone want to take it home? Because it's not going back in the kitchen. You can make a ton of these. What I like to do is put them on a sheet tray just like this, kind of roll them around in the flour, freeze them, and then once they're frozen, throw them into a Ziploc bag and call it a day. Then you can take out whatever you need. Shelf life on a fresh pasta like this is like 6 months once you get it into the freezer, all right? So it can be an activity. If you have children and their hands are clean, this is a fun activity for them. If you have children and their hands are sticky like they always are, small kids are like forever sticky. Like, how do they even get that way? I have no idea. Too many popsicles. All right. So anyways, so I'm going to put this in here. And I have pasta that's already ready to go. And I have 2 different shapes. I have some shapes that I made about a week ago, or little hand ones I made about a week ago. And then, of course, I also have some of the ones that you guys are going to be receiving machine made. They're still made by a person, but they're not rolled down a gnocchi board by hand. All right, so cavatelli's done, hash is in the fridge and ready to go. I'm gonna wash my hands and we're gonna put together our sauce, which is like the best part of this whole dish. So, pan here, I'm gonna turn it up kind of high. Let's wipe down our board and give our herbs a quick chop. Now I am gonna garnish with chives, but I do want to put some chives in there as well. And what I'm going to do is just trim the ends off here because they're looking a little sad. Okay. And just a few slices. Beautiful. And then, of course, some sage. These are all pretty much together. I'm going to use my largest leaf on the outside. Put all the little leaves on the inside. And just roll it up like a very legal cigarette. And I'm gonna give it a nice chiffonade. And I'm gonna use all of this. I'm a big fan of sage, especially with the root vegetables. Ugh, it's like Thanksgiving. Okay, little stems here on the end. We do not need them. Okay, and we're gonna add some butter, just a little bit. Now I do want brown butter. Doctor didn't say anything about butter. All right, and I am going to toast my sage. Okay. Now we do want to get brown butter, so basically what's happening when the butter is browning? It's caramelizing, it is sort of burning. But what part of the butter is turning brown? Fat. Not the fat.
Dairy.
The milk solids. Milk solids. Well, butter is dairy, so you can't say the dairy. So butter consists of milk solids and fat, right? So right here, once it starts to have kind of a caramel-like color, that's what you want. You'll smell it. It'll start to smell like vanilla. So I'm going to add a little bit of water to this. Now my water is seasoned already. Yeah. You want it to taste like the ocean, whether you're cooking dried or fresh pasta. Now I'm going to turn this up just a little bit, and I'm going to let this reduce. It's going to create our glacé, all right? And then we'll add a little more butter. This is a tablespoon in the restaurant. We cube pounds of butter into 16 pieces, so that's a tablespoon, right? So technically it's 2 if you really want to be technical. I just say put it in there until you're satisfied and be done with it. All right, so while our glacé is building, and I am going to add a little bit of pepper to this now, I'm going to wait until the very end to season it with salt. We're going to cook our cavatelli. So we have 2 different kinds here. These are the ones that you guys are going to have. They're made by a machine, and these are just the little hand-rolled ones. They look very, very different, right? And these are frozen. We're just going to go right into the water from frozen. You don't have to worry about the flour getting into the water. If anything, it'll help us in the long run. All right. Those will probably take between 3 and 5 minutes to cook. You just want them to cook, to warm up. All right, so glacé is coming together. I have my chives ready for garnish, as well as some Parmesan cheese to pull it together. At the very end, we're going to finish it with a little bit of ricotta salata. And I need to grab my hash so we can put half of our hash in as well. Beautiful. Hash, hash, hash. Chives are in. Now guys, if you have food in front of you, I encourage you to eat it while it's nice and hot. Hot. Good. Let's go ahead and add our pasta. Good. Okay, so in go our cavatelli. Good. Dish. Serving spoon. Beautiful. Now, if your sauce does separate a little, that's what the pasta water is for. You just go ahead, put a little pasta water in at a time, and bring it back to being a glacé so it doesn't look so, like an oily, greasy, ew mess. All right, so a little bit of espeleta on the edges just for color. All right, guys, so the last thing in addition to a few little chives, some ricotta salata right over the top. Okay, a little bit of that. Isn't this beautiful, guys? Yeah.